What we need is not division. What we need is not hatred. What we need is not violence or lawlessness, but love and wisdom, and compassion towards one another, and a feeling of justice toward those who still suffer. For humans, justice, an ethical issue, is not an individual issue, but social issues. Where there is a one human alone, it is a just emotion. For one person's happiness, the happiness is what this person wants to do. This is a happiness. However, the addition of the norms of the society, people concerned becomes a very complicated issue because justice has historically created for each era periods, and justice is different in each region and each countries. Furthermore, in modern times, it is normal for an individual person to be a member of many various societies' perspectives. In this multiple and overlapping society, we must live mutual respect, mutual interest. It seems that we have to think about how to do that as one of the training. It may be good to see how thinkers in the past have been thinking. In doing so, I think that being willing to think about the problems in our current society today will lead to good livings. It can be said that the good virtue for one person is fundamentally hard to match with another person on the present age. Happiness exists individually, and good virtue also exists individually. What is justice? Justice as fairness in such times, equality that at least anyone can pursue their own happiness, is one of the essential elements of a modern justice. Given the market economic system, the real world based on a pursuit of a private interest and competition, I wondered how to maintain the balance between freedom and equality. We admit that it is difficult to determine good things that differ from individual to individual, but on the other hand, we point out that good virtue is still necessary, and we should emulate the sincere stance of pursuing justice after looking at the real world. Justice, in its broadest context, including both the attainment of the which is just and the philosophical discussions of that which is just. The concept of justice is based on numerous fields and many different viewpoints, perspectives, including the concept of moral correctness based on ethic, rationality, law, religion, equity, and fairness. Often the general discussion of justice is divided into the realm of social justice, as found on philosophy, theology, religion, and procedural justice, as founded on the study and application of the law. There are three ways of approaching these matters. welfare, freedom, and virtue. Many of the common debates about justice and society revolve around these three pillars. How do we maximize social welfare? How do we respect freedom? And how do we cultivate virtue? Often moral disagreements occur between individuals. Many times these disagreements occur within the individuals. To resolve this conflict, philosophers have employed moral reasonings to hypothetical and real life. Political philosophy cannot resolve these disagreements once and for all, but it can give shape to the arguments we have and bring moral quality to the alternative we confront as democratic citizens. Frequently, a problem to help identify the moral principles that we appeal to in assessing our action, showing us how difficult it is to determine exactly what the just solution is. Over morality not only call into question how individuals should treat one another, but how society should be organized and what the law should be. Three main ways to approach what justice is, or should promote: the maximization of welfare, the respect of freedom, and the cultivation of virtue. Should we strive to maximize the good or utility for the greatest number of people? By contrast, variations on the concept that morality should be concerned with individual rights. A community-oriented virtue theory that is critical of both utilitarianism and deontology. Virtue ethics emphasizes the character of the moral agent and holds that we cannot make moral judgment divorced from our cultural framework. How different moral principles can result in different conclusions as to what is justice. According to the utilitarian, justice requires the maximization of the total or average welfare across all relevant individuals. The credible threat of punishment might lead people to make different choices. Well-designed threats might lead people to make choices that maximize welfare. This matches some strong intuitions about just punishment, that it should generally be proportional to the crime. For the utilitarian, all that bad person can mean is person who's likely to cause bad things, like suffering. Might maximize the welfare by limiting their opportunity to cause harm, and therefore the benefit lies with a protecting society. Emery doubted the greatest good for the greatest number principle. This is known as maximizing utility, which applies to both individuals and communities. Morality is to maximize the general welfare, the collective happiness, the overall balance of pleasure over pain. The right or just choice is the one that maximizes the balance of happiness over sufferings. This is commonly referred to as a cost-benefit analysis, where the benefits and cost are attributed a common value. Individual rights, the utilitarian perspective fails to respect the individual rights by only paying attention to the sum of community satisfaction. When moral reflections turns political, when it asks what laws should govern our collective life, it needs some engagement with the tumult, confused, noisy, excited, angry, crowded, strong situation and strong emotion, anger, sadness. This of the city, with the arguments and incidents that rouse the public minds. The revenge in disguise. There are differences between retribution and revenge. The former, retribution is impartial and has a scale of appropriateness, whereas the later, revenge, is personal and potentially unlimited on scale. Restorative justice, also sometimes called reparative justice, is an approach to justice that focuses on the need of victims and offenders. Instead of satisfying abstract legal principles or punishing the offender, victims are taken an active role in the process, while offenders are encouraged to take responsibility for their actions to repair the harm they've done by apologizing, returning stolen money, or community service. It is based on a theory of justice that considers crime and wrongdoings to be offense against an individual or community rather than the state. Restorative justice that fosters dialogues between victims and offenders shows the highest rates of victims' satisfaction and offenders' accountability. The pursuit of the good life, laws, and social norms, communities can cultivate a good life and good character. A particular conception of the good life risks imposing on some of the value of others. Surely an injustice took place, but can a current generation make an apology for past wrongs of previous generations? We were responsible for our own action and not the action of others. Moral individualism, but is there room for collective responsibility? To respect others, to do justice, avoid cruelty. We have an obligation of solidarity to those of whom that we share a certain history. The moral weight of this obligation is derived from the situated aspect of a moral reflection, from recognition that my life story is implicated in the stories of others. These obligations manifest themselves in families, communities, and religious organizations. Collective selfishness, prejudices for own kind. Many of the special responsibilities flow between particular communities who have a morally burdened history, like the history between the ancestors of slaves' owners and the ancestors of slaves, can create a moral responsibility for communities beyond than the ones that we belong to. Justice and the common good, pursuit of the good life. It is not always possible to decide the question of justice and right without resolving substantive moral questions. Even where it's possible, it may not be desirable. There is no space for neutrality within the state. Justice is inescapably judgment. Questions of justice are linked with competing notions of honor and virtue, pride, and recognition. Justice must be understood beyond what is a right way to distribute the things. It is also about right way to value things. A politics of a moral engagement is not only a more inspiring ideal than the politics of avoidance, it is also a more promising basis for a just society. If a just society requires a strong sense of community, it must find a way to cultivate it in citizens, a concern for the whole, a dedication to the common good. Markets are useful instruments for organizing productive activity, but unless we want to let the market rewrite the norms that governs social institutions, we need a public debate about the moral limits of markets. The gap between the rich and the poor undermines the solidarity that the democratic citizenship requires. We needed a more robust and engaged civic life than the ones to which we become accustomed to a more robust public engagement, with our moral disagreements could provide a stronger, not a weaker, basis for mutual respect. To define rights required us to figure out the purpose and or essential nature of the social practice in question. Justice is to reason or argue about what virtue it should honor and reward. Justice are really just debates about honor, virtue, and the nature of the good life. Justice means giving the people what they deserve. But one must argue, what are the merits that determine what someone is due? What is the cost of human life? Individual rights to be absoluted and above any other moral code. They favor free markets and minimum government regulations, not in the name of economic efficiency or social welfare, but in the name of human freedom. Libertarian ideal rests on the basis of self-ownerships. I own myself and my labor, and if I own my own labor, I am entitled to the fruit of labor. Taxing the rich to pay the poor violates the rights of the rich. The objection is that taxation is not salary. If we are taxed, we can choose to work less and pay lower taxes. In the democracy, individuals have the voice and making the tax laws to which we are subject. Libertarian ideas lend themselves to some particularly troubling moral questions. Should one be able to terminate their own life through assisted suicide? Should a person be free to sell a kidney? What about consensual cannibalism? Do markets have morals? Is a free market fair? Are there some goods that money cannot buy or should not buy? If so, what's wrong with buying and selling these goods? What obligations beyond the market do citizens of democracies owe to one another, and how do such obligations arise? Law raises important and complex issues concerning equality, fairness, and justice. There is an old saying that all are equal before the law. Equality before the law is one of the basic principles of classical liberalism, not for equality of outcome. Classical liberalism opposed pursuing a group's rights at the expense of individual rights. Jews, Muslims, and Christians traditionally believe that justice is a present, real, and right, and especially governing the concept along with mercy, and that justice is ultimately derived from and held by God. According to the Bible, such institutions as the Mosaic law were created by God to require the Israelites to live by and apply as His standards of justice. The Hebrew Bible describes God as saying about the Christians, Abraham, "No, for I have chosen him, that he may charge his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord, by doing lighthouseness, and justice. God and Jesus Christ as having and display and justice, often in comparison with God, display and spousing mercy. Act only according to that maximize whereby you can. At the same time, with that it should become a universal law without the contradiction. When humans seek pleasure or avoid pain, we are not acting freely because we are acting as slaves to our appetites and desires. To act freely is not to choose the best means to particular end. It is to choose the end itself for its own sake. When choosing the actions, one may consider the ends that are right, such as helping someone, and ends which are good, such as enriching oneself. To be truthful, not because it is good, but because it is a principle. The principles of justice are chosen behind the veil of ignorance. It has been argued that systematic or programmatic political and moral philosophy with the question that what is justice? Justice is overwhelmingly important. Justice is a first virtue of social institutions and the truth is the system of thought. The concept of justice is always constructed and logical or etymological opposition to the concept of justice. Such approaches cite various examples of injustice as a problem which a theory of justice must overcome. A number of post-World War II approaches do, however, challenge that seemingly obvious dualism between those two concepts. Justice can be thought of distinct from benevolence, charity, prudence, mercy, generosity, or compassion, although these dimensions are regularly understood to also be interlinked. Justice is a concept of cardinal virtue, of which it is one. Metaphysical justice has often been associated with concept of fate, the incarnations of divine providence, with a life in accordance with a cosmic plan. The association of justice with fairness is thus historically and culturally inalienable. Most citizens in the democratic countries have never signed a contract, but much of a political philosophy regarded as a social contract, a social agreement of surrendered some right and freedom in exchange for the protection of the rest of our lives. That consent is a tacitly provided when anyone enjoys the benefit of government, what principles the community would agree to during the initial situation of equality. If society gathered to collectively decide on which moral principles they want to govern the social contract, social safety net, basic liberties for all, such as the freedom of speech and association, which would supersede the social utility or general welfare, economic equality, a system that provides benefits to the least well-off, redistribution, to compensate for past wrongs and injustice, the promotion of diversity, to pursue diversity as a social good. Diversity allows for individuals to learn from one another and gain critical, cultural, and intellectual perspectives. Vitality and intellectual excellence. Marginalized communities.